some of the important questions that you can expect in a June exam paper. Alright, so the first question we are looking at is, between which two integers does a root lie? Of in Afrikaans, tussen watse twee heelgetalle lê 'n spesifieke wortel? So the way you're going to approach this question is you take the root I'm giving you, which is root 20, and we are going to try and find a perfect root that is less than 20 and a perfect root that is greater than 20. Alright, so the roots less than 20 is root 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, and so forth. Alright, so which one of this will give me a perfect answer? So a perfect square of a volkome vierkant means that there is no decimals. It is going to give me a whole number, a heel getal. Now obviously if we put root 19 to our calculator, we see that this is not a perfect square, this is not a perfect square, this is not a perfect square, but this is a perfect square. So it means the first perfect square I get less than root 20 is root 16, which will give me a value of 4. Then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So now I'm just going to get roots that are greater than 20. So now I have a root of 21, root of 22, root of 23, root of 24, root of 25, root of 26, etc. So we know that root 21 will not give me a perfect square. The root of 22 is also not a perfect square, neither is 23, neither is 24. However, root 25 will give me 5, which is in fact a whole number, an integer, which means that this will be the root of 25, and the answer it gives me is 5. Right, and then if I ask you to demonstrate this on a number line, as hulle vir jou vra met die voorgestelde getallyn, it means you're going to draw your number line. Your first value is going to be the 4, so whatever value you have here, your second value is whatever your second value is, which in my case is 5. I'm going to have an open circle here, because it's not equal to 4 or equal to 5, it's between 4 and 5, and then we just connect our two dots with a straight line. And a question like this is an easy 3 marks in a test. Now let's have a look at the second type of question they will definitely ask you. So this question is to factorize fully of om volledig te factoriseren. So the first thing I would do is definitely write down my options. Alright, so the first method of factorization I remember is to get a highest common factor, or in Afrikaans om 'n gemeenskaplike factor te kry. Then your second method is to get the difference of two squares, which in Afrikaans is die verskil van twee vierkante, and you know that this type of method is only applicable if there's only 2 terms. Alright, then my third method is my trinomials. So jou 3-term. This one is obviously only applicable if there is 3 terms. And then I have my fourth option, which is grouping of groepering in Afrikaans. And I know this one is only applicable if there is 4 terms. And then my last method is my cubes, or in Afrikaans, my derde magte. Once again, this one is only applicable if there is 2 terms. So if I can give you a hint for your test, before you try and factorize, always check how many terms you have. Alright, because that will give you indication of what method to use. So looking at the example I have here at question A, I can see that I have 2 terms. So it either has to be the difference of 2 squares, or it has to be a cube. Alright, now we know that root 27 is not a perfect square. However, the cube root, jou derde van 27 is perfect. It will give me an answer of 3. Alright, so we know that this is method 5. Okay, now let's just write it down to factorize it. I've made quite a few videos on factorization, so if you're still struggling with that, first watch those videos before you continue with this video. Alright, so in my first bracket, I'm going to get the cube root of both my first and my second term. Alright, and then the sign you have in between these two terms is the sign I gave you. So in this example, I gave you a plus, so it means the sign I have here has to be a plus. Alright, so that's how you get your first part. Now the cube root of 27 is 3. 3 divided by 3 gives me x. Then the cube root of 125 is 5. And I'm going to say 6 divided by 3, which gives me y to the power of 2. Now to get your larger bracket, and this is usually where you make mistakes. So your first term in your large bracket is the first term I gave you divided by what you took out. So it will be 27x to the power of 3 divided by 3x. Now the sign you have here is the opposite of what you had in your first bracket. So my first bracket I had a positive, so now I have to have a negative. Alright, to get your middle term, you take these two terms in your first bracket and you multiply them together. And then to get your final term, I'm just going to write it here. But you know that this sign here will always be positive. And then to get my last term, I'm going to take what I gave you. So I gave you 125 y to the power of 6 and divided by what I took out, which is 5y squared. Alright, so simplifying this, I am left with 27 divided by 3, which is 9. 3 minus 1 gives me x squared. I have my minus. 3 times 5 will become 15 xy squared. I know that this sign is always a positive, and then 125 divided by 5 is 25, and then y6 minus y2 will become y to the power of 4. And there you fully factorized the question. Alright, let's have a look at number B. Alright, so once again, let's quickly have a look at how many terms I have. So I can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Right, which means the method I'm going to use here is grouping. So we are going to take our first two terms and put them in a group, and our second two terms and put them in a group. And then remember to always highlight your sign in between so that you don't forget that sign. Alright, so looking in my first group, I can see that there's a common factor of 3. So removing that, I'm left with x squared minus 4, because 12 divided by 3 is 4. Then I have my minus in between. Alright, and remember, whenever you have a negative, you know that the sign in your bracket has to change. Alright, so I already know that whatever is in my bracket now has to be a positive. Okay, so the common factor between 4x and 8 is going to be 4. So this leaves me with x plus 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now I'm encountering a problem. My first bracket and my second bracket is not the same. So I have to do something to make them the same. So looking at my first bracket, do you see that here you have the difference of 2 squares? Alright, so I'm first going to factorize this once again, making my two brackets. One bracket always has to be positive, one bracket always has to be negative. So the square root of x squared is going to be x, and the square root of 4 is going to be 2. Alright, then I have minus 4x plus 2. Now I see that in fact here and here I have exactly the same bracket, so I do have a common bracket. So I'm going to take out my common bracket, and then you make your second bracket for what's left. So if I remove this bracket and I remove this bracket, I'm left with 3 bracket x minus 2 minus 4. I multiply in my 3, and this will give me a final answer of x plus 2 bracket 3x minus 6 minus 4, and that will become 3x minus 6 minus 4 is minus 10. And here you have your final answer. Right, now let's quickly have a look at question C. Alright, so question C I can see is 1, 2, 3. So I know that this is going to be a trinomial, or in Afrikaans a drieterm. Alright, so I always first check for a common factor. However, there is no common factor between 6, 1 and 2. So we're going to start factorizing this. So knowing that this sign here is a negative, I know that my one bracket has to be a positive and my one bracket has to be a negative. Now let's get the factors of 6. So the factors of 6 will be 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. And the factors of 2 will be 1 times 2. So if I draw a quick table for myself using the table method, let's say we are first going to try and use this terms. Okay, I'm going to have 2x and a 3x. I'm going to have a 1 and a 2. Alright, then you know you're going to cross multiply. So 2 times 2 becomes 4x. And then 3x times 1 becomes 3x. Now, using these two terms, let's see if it works out. Remember, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So if I say 4x minus 3x, it's going to give me positive 1x. However, I am looking for negative 1x. So if I switch these two around, so 3x minus 4x, I get negative 1x, which is exactly what I want. Alright, so now we're just going to take our top two and our bottom two, put them into brackets. I'm going to have 2x and 1 in my first bracket, and 3x and 2 in my second bracket. Now I just have to decide which bracket is going to be positive and which bracket is going to be negative. So I'm going to take my first and my fourth term and multiply them together. So 2x times 2 gives me 4x, and my 4x was negative, meaning that my negative has to be here and my positive has to be there. If you are unsure, you can always multiply out your brackets and see if you get the same answer. Alright, so in part 2 of this video, we are going to look at the next few questions.